Hey everyone, this is part three of Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This section is going to cover pages 33 to 42. And this section is broken into three parts. All of them have to do with education, but it's really in three different veins. The first part, page 32 or 33 and half of 34, is the final arguments in his opening arguments. Excuse me for saying arguments a lot, about education. And he says that education uses the same violence and fear that the streets use. And that may seem controversial, and it is a little controversial, but think about this. If you, and this doesn't really apply to a lot of you because you're honor students, you're very good students who follow the rules, etc., etc. Think of your classmates who aren't as interested in school as you are. So they show up and they have a lot of trauma in their lives, and maybe, school is the last thing on their minds. They realize that it's not preparing them for the reality of the world they're going to live in, and they act out, or they don't do their homework, or they don't, they will willingly talk back to a teacher. Inevitably, the consequence is, well, you were going to fail the class, or if you're a behavior problem, we're going to kick you out into the Sparks room, or whatever they call it now, the Celtic Center, whatever fancy name they want to call the detention room. And inevitably, it's going to result in a suspension or an expulsion, depending on what it is you or they do. The fear of that and the violence of that act, Coates is saying, is equal to, if not worse, than the fear and violence of the streets, because not only are they using the same fear and violence tactics in the school, but now you got to go out on the street where you're going to face the same fear and violence. So it's almost a worse thing. And the end of that first paragraph on 33 says the society could say he should have stayed in school and then wash its hands of him. And this is leading into the final part of this section. This is the crux of what he's saying is wrong with education, is that we use it as a shelter, perhaps a shell, to keep some people out and some people in, right? Think about your schooling. Your schooling is very basic, okay? And I'm saying this as somebody who has been a teacher for 15 years, who hopefully will continue to get to be a teacher after this year. We'll see. But your education is very scripted. You have to follow a certain path, right? You have a little bit of variance. We allow you the illusion of choice every now and then. Oh, you could take this class if you're interested in that, but it's all the same thing. They're the same standards that you have to prove to the state. You have to take the same test, right? Blah, 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 blah. I'll get off my high horse here. But what he's saying is that we use this as a way to exclude people and to include people. And those we want to exclude, we set up these artificial boundaries and barriers, and that's what we use, right? You got to learn the rules of this game in order to play this game and to be successful at this game. Otherwise, we do not deem you good enough to play this game, right? So he talks about how, teachers and educators and whatever could have the best intentions in the world, but they're still part of this system that is actively keeping people out of being successful, of being truly educated. My neighbors are out. It's 9 o'clock at night. They're dribbling a basketball in front of my house. Anyway, so that's that first section. The second part, which begins bottom of, 34, is where he starts talking about Malcolm X. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about Malcolm X. I read the autobiography. I saw the movie with Denzel Washington. That's about the extent of my education of Malcolm X. I'm embarrassed by that. right? And after reading this section, I'm like, damn, I gotta brush up on my Malcolm X. I need to get a lot better about this. But essentially what he's saying in this section is it's not really about Malcolm X. It's about what Malcolm X stood for him. In that, where education, schooling failed him, Malcolm X filled in the blanks, meaning that he had these questions about, what it takes to become equal with whites in this society, what it takes to be a young black person in modern society. And what he's saying is that where he got his real education was through his own investigation, right? And this is something that I think no matter who you are, no matter what your skin color, no matter what race, no matter what culture you assign yourself to, this is something we should all take very seriously. If you have a question, or you are disturbed by something, or you are confused by something, the last place you should go is a textbook. The last place you should go is probably the internet. You need to go to primary sources. You need to come up with the hypothesis in your mind. What is the question that I want answered? Okay, now, where can I get answers? And this is where the internet is a great help. This is, I will never tell you to not go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great place to go to get your initial research, but it should not be the research. Same thing with the internet. Put in, the search question. Put it, go to Wikipedia, whatever you need to do. And use that as a way to identify primary sources to research. Primary sources, books, articles written by actual authors, not by the BuzzFeed staff, not by some anonymous poster on Reddit, right? I'm not saying those people aren't smart. I'm not saying that they don't know what they're talking about. But it's not a primary source. Go to that primary source and start to figure out answers for yourself. Okay? And what he is saying in this section is that his questions inevitably led to other questions, right? And that he rarely found an answer in his research. All he found were more questions. And that's what we should all strive for. There is no answer, right? To whatever question it is you're seeking. There are only more questions, but it's the pursuit of that answer that makes us more self-realized, as he talked about in section 2, and more in touch with ourselves and our society. Okay, so that is the main crux of what he's saying in the Malcolm X section. By the way, read the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's amazing. Watch the movie. Denzel Washington gives a great performance. Anyway, last section, and more about education, is he talks about going to Howard University. And he said, as he said before, the university itself was not where he got his education. Howard University was more concerned with test scores. Howard University was more concerned with fraternities and blah, 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 blah. And that's true of every college, right? What he's saying is that his real education came from the atmosphere and came from the people who went there. He talks about, the people who went there: Charles Drew, Thurgood Marshall, David Dinkins, Toni Morrison, right? These 3 pages, 40 to 43, are like the syllabus that I've been trying to teach you this semester. But what he's saying is that, and you'll find this if you go to college, is your best learning typically doesn't happen in the classroom. It doesn't happen in a lecture hall with 100 people. It doesn't happen in a classroom with 20 people. Your learning is going to come in the quad. Your learning is going to come in office hours with a professor. Your learning is going to happen when you are walking back to the dorms with somebody from class and you're just shooting the breeze and a question comes up. And he talks about this in his section, that the Mecca, he talks about the Mecca, this group of people and kind of the ghosts of people who went there in the past, are what really gave him the education and the learning to function in modern society, to function as a young black man in, early to mid 90s America, and give him that foundation of, how to think, how to act, how to be. And you'll find that as well if you go to college, okay? The big thing from this section is that in order to be a self-actualized person, you have to do the work, right? If all you want to do is graduate high school, get the grades so you can go to the college, so that you can get the degree, so that you can marry the person and get the job and have the house, that's fine, okay? But realize that's who you are. And if inevitably that does not work, if something comes up and gets in the way of that, you got two options. You can either go into an existential crisis and wonder, where did I go wrong, and spend the rest of your life wondering where you went wrong. Or you can go, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the plan for me. Let's figure out what the plan is, okay? And that's kind of what he's saying here. All right. Last couple things. That is my daughter when she was a newborn. That's me and my wife with my son when he was about 6 months old. Up there, that's the girl as well as a newborn. That's Harrison with his giant head and my wife and I kissing. That's us on our wedding day. That's my grandma and some other people. Yes, my wife painted that. Isn't she talented? That's our cousin Parker. And yes, these are my children's movies. I know that's what you're really wanting to know. Last thing, my son is doing fine. There were no complications with his surgery. He is recovering. He's cranky, but he gets to eat lots of ice cream. So he's in this perpetual roller coaster of sugar high. I'm really happy. Crash because I can't eat anything solid. So that's what I get to deal with for the next week. So have a good day. Tomorrow, meaty section of the text. You're going to like this one, okay? Have a good day, and I will see you very soon.